Hey, everybody. Welcome to the UFF Podcast, UFFS. Holy marbles in my mouth today. New year, new times, new mouth, I guess, Fish. How's it going?
It's going good. Episode number 14. Crazy that we're already on episode number 14 and that it's now 2021. So looking forward to what the new year has in store for the UFHL as well as the UFAHL, which will be launching in the months to come as well.
Absolutely. Number 14. I couldn't even get it out of my mouth because I got marbles in my mouth to start the new year. So I'm going to call it the Fish and Baits show tonight. How about that? Fish and Baits. It's got a nice ring to it. I don't know if they're fishing for anything, but...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's got a nice ring to it. Fish and Baits. It goes, didn't realize our names go that well together.
Maybe they do. Maybe we got something there. Today's topics, of course, World Juniors, including your picks. We're going to talk about that. Return to the NHL, play and division realignments within the NHL, and of course our UFHL loss to talk about there. You know, it's some UFAHL odds and ends, and we'll always finish, of course, with deadlines and important dates. So first of all, Fish, the World Juniors. You know, it is my staple. It's probably one of the hockey events every year that I probably watch personally the most of anything. And I haven't been as in tune this year as I have been in most years, but I've been trying to keep up on the Canada games. And I like what I see overall. What do you think? I think Canada looks like they have a good team as they should, but they seem to struggle with a few teams here and there, which is kind of interesting. But what's your take?
Yeah, I think Canada's got the deepest team on paper by far, which we knew going into the tournament. It's been a pretty easy, pretty smooth sailing so far for Canada going into the semifinals. Especially the fact they lost Kirby Dach with the broken wrist, their captain, right before the tournament started. That was for most teams, losing your captain would be a crippling blow, but for Canada, they never really skipped a beat just because they are that deep. They lost him as a forward, but the 14 forwards that are remaining are all first-round NHL draft picks, or 13 remaining forwards. So it's a deep team up front. Their defense has performed well, and Devin Levi, their unheralded goaltender. Again, everybody talks about how much firepower Canada has up front, and you kind of forget about the goaltending, or some people said the goaltending was the question mark, the weakness. Devin Levi's been very solid to this point in the tournament. Now comes the pressure games, the big games in semifinals, and eventually the medal games on Tuesday. So it'll be interesting to see how Devin Levi holds up as their goaltender, but certainly the rest of the lineup's going strong for Canada. And overall, there hasn't been many surprises in the tournament. There's been some weaker teams, as we sort of knew on paper going in. So there was a lot of blowouts throughout the preliminary round. And then, Finland knocking off Sweden. I guess some people might consider that a bit of an upset in the quarterfinals, that those two Nordic nations had to clash. But both teams were fairly evenly matched on paper. And I think, again, COVID took a few of the Swedish players and their coaching staff weren't able to play weren't able to be at the tournament. So I think that was a big blow ahead of time for Sweden. They missed some of those key guys that weren't allowed to participate because of COVID, but good full marks for Finland to knock off Sweden. And when you look at the Final Four, that was really the only surprise, is that Sweden's out and Finland's in. But you look at Finland, they've won 3 of the last 6 gold medals in this tournament. Canada's won the other 3. It's been back and forth, Sweden, Canada. So you look at that part, and there's not a real surprise that Finland would be in the Final Four considering their success in this tournament.
Well, I was pretty surprised watching Canada, of course, obliterate Germany in the opening game, and everybody pretty much saw that coming based on what Germany was faced with. But then I thought they struggled with Slovakia, and then I wasn't sure if Canada just needed a bit of a reset or if Slovakia was that good. But Slovakia, gave the U.S. a bit of a challenge as well. So, yeah, I'm just not sure what to think. And then, of course, I thought the Finland-Canada game would be a lot closer than it was. Then Canada just showed to dominate as well. And Finland is a fast team. I think they're fairly quick.
Yeah, certainly Finland was a faster team in the last 2 periods against Sweden. That was sort of when Finland got up to speed, Sweden had a lot of trouble handling the Finnish forwards with their forecheck and their speed. But I think that's what Canada kind of flipped the script on Finland, is that in that game especially, Canada was forechecking, super aggressive, hard on the puck, playing kind of that North American dump and chase style, and really wearing down Finland's defense, who they have a lot of I wouldn't want to call them smaller, but they don't have a punishing defense. They don't have a big, bruising defense. They're all kind of average size guys that are fleet of foot, good puck movers. And I think if you can get the forecheck going on them and get the cycle going, I think that'll give Finland all kind of problems. And that's what Canada used effectively there. But you look ahead, the Final Four, this is where the tournament really starts. These are the big games coming up, starting tomorrow on Monday with the semifinals, Tuesday with the medal games. You got Canada, Russia. Obviously a huge rivalry. We never really got that round robin or preliminary round. Normally New Year's Eve is either Canada, Russia or Canada, USA. And this year it was Canada, Finland. And like you said, that game was kind of anticlimactic because Canada tilted the ice right from the start. Now we're going to get to see the quote unquote real games. We're going to see Canada, Russia in the one semifinal, Finland, USA in the other semifinal. And like you said, I don't think you can count out Finland in that game, especially coming off a emotional high of knocking off Sweden. Some people would say that was Finland's version of the gold medal to beat Sweden, but I think Finland will regroup and give the USA a good test. And then you look ahead, I mean, you could be looking at a Canada-USA gold medal showdown, and then that would leave Russia, Finland for bronze. The way it's playing out, that's the way it sort of looks to me. But again, Russia's not a pushover by any means for Canada. They have the best goaltender in the tournament in Yaroslav Askarov, who hasn't been overly sharp. He hasn't stood on his head for Russia. I think, everybody's kind of been pacing themselves for these Final Four, for the semifinals and the medal games. And this is where Yaroslav Askarov tends to shine. And if there's one goaltender in the tournament that can steal a game from Canada, even if they're outshot 2-1, it certainly is Yaroslav Askarov and the Russians.
And who's going to be cheering for him from the UFHL side? Who owns him? I'm not even sure.
Askarov is owned by the Red Army, which is certainly the quote-unquote Russian franchise. So there's quite a few Russian players on Red Army. And so Luc Grenier will certainly be rooting on, although he has Jamie Drysdale and a number of the Canadian players as well. So he'll be a bit torn. He's from Montreal and obviously has the silent partner shtick going on with the Russian side. So it'll be a fun game to watch for Red Army with players on both those teams, Canada and Russia.
And I actually knew who owned him, but I wanted you to just pump up Luke a little bit on this podcast. And I'm sure he's probably appreciating that, as well as his silent partner. So we're safe for another week. We're not going to have a silent partner looking for us on the streets of wherever we are. Your picks, it's a good thing we didn't make a bet, because the way the division, I guess the pool alignments are and the way it worked out, it's not going to work out 100% for you. But I think you picked Canada gold, Russia silver, USA bronze over Sweden. So we're certainly not going to see a Canada-Russia final. But your teams are all in there. Well, you picked USA over or Sweden for the bronze game, but you're close. You're close.
Yeah, 3 out of 4 ain't bad, you can say, for Canada, Russia, and the USA. And again, it came down to Sweden or Finland in that quarterfinal, which we sort of assumed it would. I had Sweden making it through, but they didn't. But you're right, the way the divisions were aligned this year, it was impossible, essentially, unless Russia had finished really low, but it was essentially impossible for a Canada-Russia gold medal game. I should have paid closer attention to the division alignment when I made that pick. But I do think Canada and Russia are the 2 best teams in this tournament still. So technically the semifinal between Canada and Russia could be the best game of the tournament, the gold medal game, although the Americans have been going strong. Spencer Knight's been started off a little shaky, obviously, in this tournament, but really settled in. And he had the shaky game against Russia where Russia beat the US and he turned the puck over a couple times on Boxing Day there. But he's coming off a shutout. He's been a lot more solid. So I think their goaltending solidified going into the medal round. And so I think the Americans have a lot of firepower up front, and their defense is average, I'd say, for this tournament. They don't have a super strong defense, but they're not bad. So I think on paper, the Americans are still a stronger team than Finland. But like I said, Finland's sort of the also ran of the Final Four, but I don't think you can count them out because, as people like to say, the pesky Finns, they always do well in this tournament and they find a way, which is impressive considering the entire country of Finland only has 5 million people. And they're right there at the end every year. So that's a true hockey nation, and they've produced a ton of talent in recent years. And certainly that'll be another good game, Finland, USA. But I think all eyes will be on Canada, Russia. And the expectation will be that we see a Canada-USA showdown for gold.
Personally, that's what I'm hoping for. Who doesn't like a Canada-USA rivalry anyways? So I think that'll be a great finish to it, to be honest. Of course, we need Canada to win because we can't have a loss. We cannot accept Canada to losing to the US, put it that way. So returning to NHL play, that's coming. So excited. That means we actually get our second UFHL season off the ground finally, with all 31 franchises for the first time ever, Larry, going to take part.
Yeah, for 10 of or I guess more than 10 franchises now, considering some of the recent franchise sales and new owners that are getting involved. But in the initial UFHL season, which again was a small sample size from January 20th to March 12th when COVID shut things down, there was only 21 franchises involved. 10 joined for the redraft in July. So for those 10 franchises, this will be the first ever gameplay in franchise history when the puck drops on January 13th. And some of those franchises have already made more than 20 or maybe even more than 30 trades in their franchise history, but they've never played a game per se in the UFHL. So it'll be a lot of fun for them to see their work on their roster kind of come to fruition, and the fruits of their labor will be on display when the puck drops on January 13th.
Well, I think that's what I'm excited to see, because we've seen so much action behind the scenes. You and I see it every day in the UFHL and UFFS community, but to see this come to fruition and see the games playing out and the fantasy points being awarded it's going to be pretty exciting to see. We're only a week and a half away. And what's going to be interesting is we've got, of course, the division realignments in the NHL and the whole Canadian division. This is going to be really strange, and I don't know the history of hockey as well as you do, but there must be a long time since we've really had a Canadian division. I don't even know if we ever have. And they're going to have like kind of sort of mini, what do you call it? A baseball type format, I guess, this year.
Yeah. So they're moving to, like I said, more of a baseball type format with the little mini series, little mini playoff series, you can almost say, throughout the schedule. You'll never have one-off games. You'll always play sets of 2, 3, or 4. And in some cases, I believe Los Angeles and Anaheim have a 5-game set at one point. So all these rivalries, when say Toronto goes into Winnipeg, they're going to either play 2, 3, or 4 games. It's not going to be just one night in Winnipeg, the next night in Calgary. They're going to be, so there's going to be some bad blood brewing and some carryover effect in these little mini series. And certainly for the fans and for the coaching staffs in the NHL, there's going to be a lot more involvement from coaching, a lot more tactics, because you're going to sleep on it and you're going to play the same team again the next day. And much like the playoffs, right? Like you would in a 7-game series in the playoffs, these will be little mini 2, 3, 4-game series, but it's going to be exciting and intense hockey. And the all Canadian division certainly will have a lot of eyes on it. There's a lot of superstar type players up in Canada anchoring these franchises. And there's some bad blood already. I mean, everybody knows how heated the Battle of Alberta got last season. And I think the Battle of Ontario is going to heat up as well. Ottawa's improved quite a bit on paper. And I think you look at that matchup, and Ottawa's brought in a lot of truculence and some grit to their lineup. So I think they're going to try and push Toronto around a bit. And everybody expects Ottawa to be the also ran in that division and to finish last. But I think you're going to see Ottawa put up a decent fight and be a real hard-working team. And I think you're really going to see Montreal probably take the biggest step. They've really loaded up this offseason, brought in a lot of new faces, and again, brought in a lot of guys that Marc Bergevin likes, that real gritty game with guys like Corey Perry and Josh Anderson. And the list goes on with the guys. They've even a guy like Tyler Toffoli, and they've made a lot of additions without much subtraction in Montreal. So I think you're going to see the Canadians be a lot stronger. I've seen some people pegging Montreal as the favorite in the all-Canadian division. And when you look at their lineup, they might not have a huge superstar player like a Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews or some of these other Canadian franchises. But certainly as far as depth goes, Montreal is going to be a deep team. And again, when you're playing these little series of 3-4 games in a row, those third and fourth line guys are going to have to play more minutes as those series go on. And I think that's where Montreal could have an edge as far as the all Canadian division goes.
God help us if they're top, Larry. Not a Habs fan, sorry. But, it's going to be interesting. So this 3-4 game type baseball format, as you call it, was what I was wondering from a coaching standpoint, how it would look, because I guess you won't have as much time to review tape unless you want to stay up all night because you're going to play the game again against the same team. But I guess the strengths and weaknesses of each team you play will be top of mind. So you really won't have to review much tape. You'll just know, right? But it should be interesting. It's going to be different.
Yeah, I think that's why the coaches make the big bucks. They're going to be staying up. There will be a lot of sleepless nights prepping, and certainly videos become a big part of the game now for players as well. They have tons of video meetings. I see it at the junior level in the WHL. They have a lot of video meetings prior to each game to study the opponent, especially their special teams, what systems they played the night before, and everything else. So I think video players coming up are very accustomed to learning through video, and I think we're going to see that become that much more important with these kind of mini playoff series throughout the season, as coaches are going to have to be very mindful of their tactics from one day to the next, and maybe a little bit easier because you're not always preparing for a new opponent every day. You can kind of zero in on the team you're facing, but there will be a lot of video digested, and there will be a lot of in-series adjustments made, and the team that makes the best adjustments, they might lose that opening game, but they might win the next two in a 3-game set based on their adjustments and based on their depth again, because the star players could carry the load for one game, but when you get into that game 2, game 3, you're going to have some of your depth guys step up, and that's where, like I said, a team like Montreal looks pretty deep. And throughout the Canadian division, though, I think Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, there's no pushover there either. I think the Western Canadian franchises are all pretty strong on paper heading into the season. So if we were doing standings predictions for the all Canadian division, I think aside from most people expecting Ottawa to finish last, the other 6 franchises are neck and neck, and it would be hard to predict how that's going to shake out.
So about a week and a half away as we record this podcast, I'm excited. And personally, I think I'm more excited for the UFHL component that comes along with the NHL starting play. So can't wait to see how the 31 franchise owners start to begin to take shape within the fantasy point system of the UFHL. And of course, along with the NHL and their new COVID-related division realignment, we have our own division realignment, which we've been I know you've been very busy on in the past couple of days here. And what it is, Larry, and this, but just speaking to the masses out there, is that we listen to the franchise owners in this league and the general managers and the scouts, and if they have something important that they want to see, then we'll do our best to see if it makes sense to in a fit in the UFHL. And in this case, we did it. Don't know if we'll ever do it again, but we did listen. We did want to bring forward more of a theme-based focus of the division names. So what do? We had an auction. Tell us about how this went down.
Yeah, so you can see behind me the old divisions. That was the divisions heading into this realignment event. And it was an interesting event because we did it as kind of an auction/lottery. So franchises got to declare whether or not they wanted to bid on what division they would be in, and or be a non-bidder, which case we just did a spinning wheel and wheel of fortune basically to determine randomly who would be the lottery draw if nobody bid on a certain placement, and then they were automatically placed in a division. So there ended up being 12 out of 31 franchises wanted to bid on what division they went in, and the divisions were named after we had different themes that they could choose, and the majority chose that they wanted to name the divisions after NHL Hall of Famers. And so the winning divisions, they're no longer named the Diamond, Emerald, Gold, and Western Stars. They're now named the Gretzky, Lemieux, Orr, and Howe divisions. And so again, when you went into the auction, some people bid on placements because they wanted to be in a certain division because Wayne Gretzky, they're an Oilers fan, they wanted to be in the Gretzky division, or they're from Saskatchewan, or in one case, they're from Detroit and they want to be in the Howe division. So there was different reasons. And then certainly the bidding played out. Some people wanted to be in divisions with their friends and family or their rivals from other fantasy leagues. They wanted to face off again within the same division here in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. So there was a lot of different motives and incentives for the bidding as to what division they went in. But 12 out of 31 franchises took part in the bidding. The rest were non-bidders and were automatically kind of placed randomly based on the wheel. And it ended up raising a decent amount of money for the prize pool. They got $396 extra US dollars to compete for this season. It grossed $495 in revenue. So did pretty well from a revenue standpoint. And from what I can tell, everybody's pretty happy with the parity across all the divisions. Looks pretty even and level heading into the season, because that's sort of why we did the auction and why we did the realignment. Is some people felt one division, in this case the Western Stars, was pretty stacked. According to the power rankings, I think 5 of the top 15 teams were in the same division, so they wanted to shake things up, and they certainly pushed for the realignment. And like I said, the brass listened and realized it was something that a lot of franchises wanted to be involved in, so we put it to a vote, and realignment won, and we've kind of taken the steps from there to realign the league with some exciting new divisions.
So as always, most of the money that came in goes back to the prize pool. So added a decent sum of money again into the prizes coming up here. So let's look at the divisions. We've got the Gretzky Division, Lemieux Division, Orr Division, and Howe Division. Great names. I love the theme. There's no better theme idea to having, well-known and very well-respected hockey names to head up these divisions. I think that's really cool. But it looks like, so the number one, as per the power rankings that have been released in the UFHL, Grizzlies in the Gretzky Division. I can see some pretty good trash talk in here between the Grizzlies and Red Army there. What do you think of the Gretzky Division? Do you think that is there any surprises based on the power rankings in there? Do you think are going to change their numbers, so to speak?
So the interesting thing with the Gretzky Division is, throughout the lottery or throughout the auction event, the Gretzky Division seemed to be filling up quicker with there was more teams in the Gretzky Division. It was the first division to fill up. And certainly the way it was playing out, Grizzlies ended up jumping into the bidding and chose that division. And when that happened, it sort of triggered a chain reaction where Red Army, when there was only one spot left for that division, Red Army stepped up. There was a bidding war already going on. I think it was up to $65 or $70. And Red Army just threw down $100 and doubled the bid basically, and said, I want the last spot in that division. And when Luc Grenier made his announcement, he said partially because maybe some of the lower teams are in that division. There were, I guess, 5 teams ranked in the 20s in that division already, just from they were randomly drawn to that division. And but the main reason he said he wanted that division is he wanted to challenge the number 1 team in the power rankings, and that is the Grizzlies. So he chose it partially because maybe it looked a little weaker based on the power rankings, but certainly Red Army wants to be number 1 in the power rankings. So they wanted to go head-to-head, toe-to-toe with the Grizzlies going forward. And like you said, this realignment is permanent. It's not something that'll be done again next season or anytime soon. So I think you're right. Grizzlies and Red Army will be rivals for the foreseeable future in the Gretzky Division.
And you're right. We do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams based on the power rankings that are in the 20s in that division. If you look at the number 2 franchise, as per the power rankings, the Yetis, they're in the Lemieux division, and their next biggest rival would be the Ice Vikings, I guess, at number 6. And yeah, there's 3 ranked in the power rankings in the 20s there. So fairly well balanced, I would say, that division.
Yeah, I think the Gretzky division is probably the most top heavy. When you consider the 1 and 3 seeds, according to the power rankings, are both there. But when you look at the Lemieux division, the neat thing there was the first 3 placements up for auction all went to the Lemieux division. It was Arlo Scholes took the first placement, and as the Murder Hornets, who are going to be renaming, they'll have a new franchise name by the next time we do a podcast. But the Murder Hornets took the first placement. And then his brother-in-law, the Power players, Luke Schonwise, also planning to rebrand by this time next week, took the second placement. And then Charisse Scholes, who's Arlo's wife and Luke's sister, took the third placement. So the first 3 placements that were up for auction all chose the Lemieux division, with husband and wife and brother-in-law / sister getting there. So that was a cool way to start the auction, was to see that there was a real incentive for those 3 to be in the same division and to have that sort of sibling rivalry and family tree rivalry going on in the Lemieux division. But you're right, the Yetis ended up being drawn into that division, as well as the Ice Vikings. Neither of them were bidders, but they are sort of the top seeded teams in that division, who look like perhaps the best on paper heading into the season, as well as Blades of Steel is another team that is probably a bit forward heavy, but has brought some more firepower in it since the power rankings. They were ranked number 11, and again, we've talked about the scoring system, or the owners have brought it up, that it leans a little bit towards forwards being more valuable than defensemen. It's tough to beat the Blades of Steel's forward group. So perhaps they should have been a little higher in the power rankings. I wouldn't sleep on Blades of Steel going into the season with their forward group.
And then I would say the next two divisions, the Orr division and the Howe division, are fairly well balanced by the looks of it. You got the 4th and 5th placed as per the power rankings, Strong Island and Titans in the Orr division, fairly well balanced. Dean Millard's Duckman's Domination bringing up the bottom at number 30 there. And of course, the Howe division, the two top teams are 8th and 9th, Outlaws and Gators, and the expansion franchise will fit into that division eventually as well. And the Dynasty, of course, in rebuilding mode, as we know, bringing up the bottom of that pack there. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I love the names. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And yeah, a lot of these names are going to change due to, or some of them due to the rebranding, which is ongoing. And again, may not happen a lot again in the future. We'll see. Time will tell. But we've had so many different players and owners this year in a building year that, these were just some of the things we allowed.
Yeah, being an inaugural season, and some of the franchises have never had any gameplay. They were allowed a window until January 10th to rename, rebrand, and a handful of franchises are taking advantage of that. But for the most part, going forward, much like the division names and the division alignment, the franchise brands will be largely permanent, certainly the franchise names going forward. So some people maybe looked at their name and said, I could do a little bit better with this and something more personal or whatever the case. So some franchises are rebranding, but you look at the Orr and the Howe division, and they really are, like you nailed it. They're very competitive top to bottom for the most part. A lot of contenders in both divisions. Strong Island sort of anchoring the Orr division, but Titans and Strong Island are both very strong teams. They were ranked 4th and 5th in the power rankings, and certainly contenders. And then the other division, you have Outlaws and Gators also as two top 10 franchises in the Howe division. So I think over time, there's going to be good parity in all 4 divisions. And those two might have some of the tougher or some of the more intense playoff races because again, one thing we're mirroring in the NHL this season is different than normal in the NHL. Is normally they have wild cards where the fifth best team in one division can cross over and claim a playoff berth from the other division. But this year, because of COVID and everything else, the NHL is just going the top 4 from each division make the playoffs. And the UFHL will be doing that as well. So we'll certainly see some playoff races, likely in all 4 divisions, the way it shook out. So we're pretty happy with the results. And like I said, so far the feedback, even the randomly drawn, the non-bidding franchises, no one's really complained about where they landed. Everybody seems to think the divisions are fairly well spread out, and that there's not a real division of death, as we like to say in sports, where it looks daunting to be in one division. All 4 look pretty even across the board. Like I said, maybe the Gretzky division a little top heavy and some weaker teams at the bottom. But even like you said, the Dynasty bringing up the rear in the Howe division, at technically number 31. Dynasty's probably made 10 trades since those power rankings. And I think they're a sleeper. You look at that roster, especially the forward group on Dynasty, they're much improved from where they were a month ago. So I wouldn't be surprised if Dynasties played their way and traded their way out of the bottom 5 when the season plays out. So I don't think Dynasties as bad as they look with that number 31 beside them. And certainly, like I said, the expansion franchise will be entering that division because 3 divisions have 8 franchises and the Howe division only has 7. So naturally, with the expansion franchise coming for 21-22 next season, starting in the fall, that franchise will automatically be placed in the Howe division.
So good segue into the expansion franchise, which is something we just kicked off as well. Of course, mirroring the NHL with the expansion franchise in Seattle. We have just kicked off on Air Auctioneer an auction for anybody that's interested in getting a piece of the action and the progressive prize pool, which is now just over $47,000 US as of the realignment division realignment auction. So tell us about this. It's up for auction and it's going to be happening for a little while here, Larry.
Yeah, so it'll end on March 1st is when we're planning to award the new franchise to the winning bidder on March 1st. which was the same date that Vegas joined the NHL. When they came in was March 1st. So that's why we made the deadline March 1st for bids, or for the closing date for the auction. But certainly we thought new year, new franchise, let's start the auction on January 1st. So I think we'll see a lot of the potential bidders kind of wait it out, and they got 2 months to monitor this auction and jump in at any time. But we're waiting for our starting bid to see who wants to put that up. But certainly we started the bids at $1,500 USD, which was the average of the last 10 franchise sales. So you look at the most recent franchise sale, which was the current high at $2,400 USD, was the Bombers selling to now known as the Generals. And that franchise was ranked number 23, or actually technically 24 in the power rankings. So 24th ranked franchise sells for $2,400 USD. That sort of tells you where the current market value is on franchises. So it'll be interesting to see that bidding war come March 1st when it really matters, because it'll come down to the wire. And I think we'll see more people jump in the bidding on the last day, as is normal with an auction type event. But certainly we're going to mirror the expansion process as closely as possible. So there'll be an expansion draft. There'll be protection list deadlines. There'll be, as soon as the franchise is awarded, they'll get some immediate gameplay. They'll be able to start signing prospects that are owned by scouts, or registering their own affiliated scout, a friend or another scout they can bring into the fold, get an agency going perhaps, and start building out their farm system as well as their prospect pool. So there'll be some immediate gameplay as of March 1st, or as soon as they complete their payment. And certainly also they'll be getting, as part of the package, a UFHL franchise. They'll get the 32nd UFHL franchise and the 32nd UFAHL franchise, which will be their affiliate, much like Seattle will have Palm Springs. And they'll have a whole year to build on that UFAHL franchise that'll start play in 2022-23 season. So it's quite the package that they're getting, as well as the equivalent to third overall odds in the entry auction, which is the UFHL's version of the NHL draft. So it's an enticing package, and certainly just the experience of going, kind of following the timeline of Seattle. You will feel like you're the Seattle General. You'll feel like Ron Francis, the Seattle general manager, throughout the expansion process. The draft will be on the same date as Seattle. The protected lists will be revealed on the same date as Seattle. So everything's going to be as close to possible, mirroring the NHL expansion process, which for somebody that loves fantasy hockey and wants to start from scratch and build something that's their own, this is the one chance to do it in the UFHL, because the rest of the franchises, being a dynasty league, already have their rosters filled if you were to purchase another existing franchise. Whereas this one, you get to build from the ground up, the last opportunity to do so in the UFHL.
Well, this is the best and most realistic fantasy platform there is in the world, Fish. You and I know that, and many of our franchise owners already know that. And there's only really, up until this expansion franchise, there's only been really one way in after all the franchises were owned, and that's to buy an existing franchise or make an offer. Now there's the auction for an expansion franchise. So if anybody out there is interested in actually owning a team, much like they do in the NHL, and operating your day-to-day like they do in the NHL, but without having to spend hundreds of millions of dollars, this is a way to do it for a couple $1,000 bucks. So yeah, don't hesitate. And it's probably going to sit the $1,500 bid for a little bit, but we've got I guess 2 full months here to go, and it's going to get pretty heated at the end. I can guarantee you that. It's going to be really interesting to see how much this thing goes for.
Yeah, I can confirm that at least 5 groups have reached out to me since the auction started on January 1st and asked some follow-up questions and expressed interest. So we know there's at least 5 bidders. There might be upwards of 10 bidders that are interested in this franchise, but nobody's made the first move yet to get the bidding going. But certainly there are people following this franchise. Like I said, there's at least 5 groups and probably more that are excited to get in that bidding. So I think there will be a bidding war come March 1st. And like you said, this is not a once in a lifetime opportunity, but pretty close to take over an expansion franchise and experience all things expansion, including the draft, which will be such a cool experience for anybody that has been on Cap Friendly and done the mock draft simulators to pick the Seattle franchise. It's a cool experience, but this just isn't for fun. You're going to own all these digital assets that you draft going forward. So it's an investment, and certainly I think the bidding wars, I would be shocked if this doesn't set a new high for franchise sales and raise the bar again on valuations in the UFHL. And all the current existing franchises will be rooting for that too, because the way it works is the first $200 from the franchise sale goes towards league development, and the remaining amount is evenly distributed across the 31 existing franchises to compensate for losing a player, which every franchise will lose one player to the expansion draft. So they will all get a little kickback as well, which the same as Seattle joining the NHL for $675 million. All the other 31 NHL owners are splitting that piece of the pie. They all get their piece of the pie, technically 30, because Vegas doesn't lose a player in the NHL expansion draft, but they also don't get a chunk of that $675 million. So, but we are mirroring it as closely as possible from the NHL to the UFHL, and that's going to be a really cool opportunity for the winning bidder in the expansion franchise auction.
Yeah, no, this is going to be it's going to be really exciting to watch. I think we are going to set a new bar. So you did mention, Fish, in there that the Ultimate Franchise American Hockey League is going to come along with as part of the package of the UFHL expansion franchise. So in that, we just completed, obviously, the initial auction of the UFHL, something new we're kicking off as well this year. Hopefully there's going to be some play this year. I think we're still waiting to find out. Not sure where that's at. Do you have any indication on that?
Yeah, so the AHL did hold their Board of Governors meeting on December 30th, and they decided that the framework will progress towards their tentative start date of February 5th, which is sort of what they've thrown out previously. They're going to try and stay the course and drop the puck on February 5th, which would put us in line for a January 30th, January 31st. That weekend would be the UFHL draft. And throughout the month of January, once all 31 franchises are paid up and owned, we're going to get into some voting and some topics and some sort of laying the foundation for that league, gameplay, scoring system, all that fun stuff that has to be decided before the puck drops, or certainly before the draft, because you want to finalize the scoring system and everything before you start drafting players. So everybody will have their franchise player. That's how they were auctioned off. And then they'll round out their roster. And again, even roster size is something that we're going to talk about in the weeks to come. So there's a lot to be discussed on the UFHL front. A lot of details that are still evolving, but certainly it's going to be an exciting opportunity. And there's about half or a little more than half the franchises in the UFHL stepped up and purchased UFAHL franchises to serve as their farm team. So that'll be certainly one thing to follow, as well as the franchises that are independently owned are going to end up affiliating with the UFHL franchises that didn't purchase their own franchise. They'll have another new owner kind of working alongside or working underneath them. So that'll be cool, which is the same way it works with the NHL and AHL. There is 12 franchises in the AHL that aren't owned by their NHL franchise. They're independently owned, community owned, whatever, but they still are affiliated with an NHL team. So that's kind of a cool way to mirror the real world by linking the two leagues and having the franchises be true affiliates, true farm teams. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out between now and the UFAHL draft at the end of January.
Very dynamic, lots of moving parts, and that's the way we like it. Lots of, some leasing opportunities, things like that, sharing the wealth, so to speak. And we're going to mirror the UFHL in naming the divisions. I think we've got that coming in the UFAHL as well. Yeah,
we're in the process of naming the divisions and the conferences in the UFAHL. They're submitting suggestions, and we would like to, again, the continuity, the consistency with the two leagues being linked or connected, much like intertwined like they are the NHL and the AHL. We wanted to stick with the Hall of Famer theme. So as soon as we decided on NHL Hall of Famers, or Hall of Famers being the UFHL theme for the division names, we decided it was only fitting that we do the same for the UFAHL. So they'll be nominating AHL Hall of Famers. They can submit 4 names that are from the list of AHL Hall of Famers as the names that they want to put forth for divisions, and there will either be a vote or potentially even an auction to determine these division names in the UFAHL, which could, if it goes to an auction route, could get the prize pool going a little bit for the UFAHL as well, because we'd like to certainly build up that prize pool as we go, using the same revenue chart for transaction fees and stuff, but be nice to have a little bit of a base, and maybe that could come through naming the divisions and conferences. So to be determined. But first things first, they got to submit the names that are up for voting or up for auction as far as who they would like these divisions to be named after. And it's pretty interesting names when you go through the AHL Hall of Famers. They're a lot different than the NHL or the actual Hockey Hall of Fame. There's some names that some guys didn't even make the NHL as a player. A guy like Bruce Boudreau or Brian Kilray, guys that are big names in the hockey world as coaches now, but they were Hall of Fame players in the AHL. So that part's kind of cool. We'll see what kind of names come forward to potentially be division and conference names in the UFHL.
It's amazing when you throw out opportunities for people to come up with naming rights or ideas out in the hockey community with great hockey minds like yourself. It's amazing the things that come forward. It gives us lots of choice, lots of things to talk about. It's been incredible the amount of activity in this UFFS community. With the lack of hockey this last year. So I can't even imagine, Fish, what's going to happen once hockey gets started. It's going to blow our minds. So coming up, we do have some other things that need to happen and take place. So we want to always remind, as we do at the end of every podcast, is important deadlines and important dates coming up. Fish, can you help us out with that?
The two biggest dates coming up are both tied to the roster deadline. So by Monday morning at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Monday, January 11th, so not this coming Monday, but next Monday, will be the waivers deadline. So any players that UFHL franchises plan on starting on their protected list that would require waivers in the NHL in order to start in the AHL or on the taxi squad, those waivers players have to be declared a day in advance, the morning of January 11th. Next Monday. And what will happen there is there'll be a group of, if you look on the UFHL sheets under the rosters, you'll see all of the names with waivers beside them on the protected list. Those players, if they were to start on the protected list, would have to clear a 24-hour waivers auction. There are some franchises that have open roster spots that'll certainly looking at that saying, hey, I might want to bid on this guy or that guy. And so they'll have 24 hours to bid on the players that are available on waivers. And then they'll have another 5-hour window or so on Tuesday, January 12th. So next Tuesday, they'll have that finalization window of just a few hours, which is the exact same amount of time they have in the NHL, to then declare their opening night lineup, their opening night 23-man roster. So there will be some people that plug holes or swap guys in and out from the waivers auction, but they'll have to declare their waiver eligible players that aren't going to make their cut for the 23-man roster have to be waived prior to Monday morning. And then Tuesday is when they'll auction them off throughout Monday, and that'll end Tuesday morning. And then Tuesday afternoon, they have to fit everybody into the puzzle, the 23 pieces into the puzzle, and announce their opening night lineup. And the puck drops on Wednesday, January 13th. So lots of action, expecting another little wave of trades and action, both in the NHL and in the UFHL between now and next Monday, as far as putting those pieces together and making sure their opening night roster is good to go for Tuesday, January 12th. And one thing with the waivers, guys, is I think we're going to see some of those guys on the protected list with waivers beside them might get traded here this week, because somebody's going to take a look and say, okay, they're going to be in the waivers auction. That could be a bidding war. Why don't I just trade for them now and plug them into my lineup and beat the rush, beat the bidding war, right? So I think we'll see some of these teams that are deeper that already have, and for the franchise owner, potentially losing that guy on a waivers auction, you might be able to get something more through a trade, another prospect or draft pick. So I think we'll see some minor moves as well as maybe a blockbuster or two between now and next Monday to really set the stage for opening night on January 13th.
Good food for thought. Put it in your Google calendars. Remember those dates. And of course, there'll be information forthcoming, as there always is. I know, Fish, you're excellent with that. So keep your attention on Telegram and your emails, because there will be information and reminders coming out. Other than that, I think, 2-Minute Tuesday coming up on Tuesday. I do have a tracking device planted in Ashley's phone, the previous owner of the Monarchs, because she does have the Klein Cup in hand. And I told her, I said, hey, we want to see a sip and do a cheers out of that Klein Cup. So we're going to try and track her down and get her on the 2-Minute Tuesday coming up, hopefully keeping my fingers crossed. And she can't get away from me, Fish. She's trying, but she can't get away from me. We're gonna get this together here. We're gonna make it happen. Have to get a drink out of the Klein Cup.
Absolutely, looking forward to it, especially with the new season starting and that being the last 2-Minute Tuesday, or before the new season. It'd be a great way to kind of give Ashley her one last hurrah in the UFHL and then pass that cup back to the founders and to the league to hold on to for our 2021 Klein Cup champion, which certainly is going to be hotly contested this coming season, because there are well over 10 contenders on paper that could be the Klein Cup champion and the Founders Trophy for the regular season champion as well. So it'll be nice send off for Ashley. Hopefully get her drinking out of the cup, like you said, and then get it back in the league's hands, and let's see who gets it next. And the cool thing is, again, with the Klein Cup, it's fully engraved. So there is Ashley Murray's name. Any other staff members you have, your scouts, your assistant GMs, their names would be on, as well as your entire roster of players that help you win that Klein Cup, just like the NHL. So very cool, the engraving of the cup and the fact that you get the physical cup shipped to you or delivered to you, and you get to celebrate with it throughout the offseason, just like the NHL franchises. So looking forward to having a send-off, a last hurrah for Ashley and the Monarchs. And then we'll see what the 2020-21 season has in store for us, because again, on paper, it looks like some stiff competition, and I don't even know what the odds makers would do with this league, the UFHL, because there's a lot of contenders, and it's going to be, like you said, the best and most realistic fantasy league I've ever been a part of, right here in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League.
It's going to be fun. Looking forward to it. And as you say, Ashley enshrined for all time in the Klein Cup. So basically that's it for UFFS podcast number 14 with Fish and Baits, where you own the game.